In this lesson, we'll talk about adding materials and changing material settings. So here in Mudbox, we've got our objects set up, and we want to start to add some materials to this so that we can start painting. Now, the materials are going to kind of dictate how the objects look as far as the surface quality of this, and they're also going to serve as kind of a separator for when we start to paint textures. The textures are going to be associated with a particular material. So right now you can see that some of the objects are gray and some are this sort of mud color. You can change your material presets by coming in here. You can select different kind of presets and coming in and activating those depending on what it is that you want to add. Okay, so we can come in and start to add a different material to this. We can also apply materials, and the basic material that we want to use for these objects is going to be our Mudbox material. Now we do have a Lambert material that's available, but we want to use the Mudbox material so we can paint maps to go with a lot of different channels, and so those are the ones we want to use. Now to add a material, and you can see them listed in our object list as these little sphere kind of icons here. So I'm just going to right click on an object. I can either edit an existing material, or I can come down here and assign a new material or existing material. So I can change the material to something that already exists, or I can create a new material. You can see that we have two main ones I want to look at are the simple blend, which is a simple material. The Lambert has come through from Maya, so we can add a simple blend, but really the Mudbox material is the one we want to add. You can see that there are certain colors come in with the diffuse and specular. These are all the channels that we can change within our material. You can access all this information over here as well under our material properties. We've got that selected. Let's go ahead and change the name, and we'll call this couch back material. All right, so now we've got this particular material selected. We could change the color if we wanted to come in here and change the color of the material. We can do that in here. We can also change different attributes of the material, like the specularity. We can make it more specular, make it shinier. Okay, we can change the color of the specularity. We can also come into gloss, and we can make a very broad spec as it is here, or we can increase the gloss to create a shinier look, or a glossy effect. We also have incandescence, which we'll look at as we go through this process. We kind of create a glow with that. We also have opacity that we can choose, and reflection that we can mess with, and also bump strength, vector displacement, normal map, all kinds of different values in here that we can change. We can also create texture maps to drive these different channels. So right now they're just being driven by color, but once we start to get into painting, we'll be able to kind of drive those based on the paint. So let's come in here and let's right click on our penny, and let's add a new material. So we'll assign a new Mudbox material, and we'll just call this penny material. And we are going to be painting textures for these, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the settings just yet. Let's go ahead and add materials for the cushions. So I'm going to add a new material, and I'll call this cushion A matte, and let's assign another material here. And I'm just going to call this cushion B matte. All right, let's also assign a new material to this guy. So right click on him, assign a new material, a new Mudbox material, and we'll call this imp matte, and we can change the color of this so that it's differentiated a little bit more. Make it a little bit more saturated, just temporarily. All right, we also need to add textures for the teeth, and we'll add the same texture to all of the teeth. So I can right click on this, assign a new material. We'll call this teeth matte, and come in here and you can see the teeth material here. We can make it sort of a white color, and then I can come in now and assign existing material to these. So I can assign that teeth material, teeth, and then over here as well. Last thing, the eyes. So I'm going to unhide those, or unlock them rather. I'll add a new Mudbox. Oops, isolate those. I'll add a new Mudbox material, for the eyes. Let's make that white. And let's bring up the gloss quite a bit on that. The reflection is really what's going to kind of sell that, but we'll call this eye left matte. Okay, and let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. We'll call this eye right matte. Kind of a white, and bring up our speck. And our gloss. And really, the color is going to come from the textures. We're just kind of separating things out right now. So at this point, we have a lot of duplicate textures in here. Okay, so we can come in one by one and select any of these textures, right-click and delete the material. We can also come in here, right-click on one of these objects, and we can just say delete unused materials. Okay, it's going to delete all the unused materials from the scene. It's not undoable. Yes, go ahead and do that. And so now, you should have fewer materials. There's still a couple left here. Let's see what this Lambert is attached to. Oh, we didn't assign a material to our tag, so let's go and add a new material. We'll call this tag material. Make this kind of a light color. We'll say OK to that. And then we can delete our unused materials again. So we don't really want to tweak our materials too much until we get the lighting and the texture maps in there. But it's definitely, we're able to come in at any time and modify the values on this. So if you wanted to come into your imp material and play with the specular and gloss, you could do that. You can kind of bring the speck up, and we can see it in real time in here in our viewport. So if you want to have less of a colored speck, but a little bit more of a white speck, kind of bring that up a little bit. But you want it to look a little bit shinier. You can go into the gloss, make it a little bit glossier. If you wanted to get kind of a subsurfacey kind of glow to him, you could go into the incandescence and start to bring some of that in. Now, because it's happening all over, it just kind of makes him glow a little bit. You can see just a very small amount of that helps. But if you had some sort of glowing sword or something, you could pipe some incandescence into it and make it glow. So we could add a little bit of incandescence to it. We could also start to add reflection to this. So you can see I can make it really, really shiny, and it's using a map for that reflection map. So I could come in here, for instance, on the eyes, the eye material, start to dial that eye material up as far as the reflection strength to create a really shiny look. But maybe the guy himself, we don't really want to be that shiny, so kind of take this down a little bit. So it's really cool, some of the tools that you have in here to modify your textures. But really we want to see the modify the materials rather, but really we want to see the texture maps or the paint layers applied. But now that we have our materials assigned, we don't really need to use the material presets anymore. We've got specific materials applied to the objects, and we'll be using these from this time forward. All right, so go ahead and assign your objects materials. Assign them Mudbox materials, and if you want to keep them straight, you can assign a specific kind of color to each of them and you can make it kind of out there, just so that you're clear. You're not when you go in and start painting textures, you know that the color that you're creating is coming from the texture and not from the material, because I want to replace all the color with the texture that we're creating. And so you can come in here, and just so it's clear that that's coming from the material, you could change that diffuse color, and we can do the same thing over here and kind of make it a bit more drastic. That's just a way of saying mentally, okay, I know I haven't applied a texture yet to that, and so it's not getting any color from that. All right, so that's a look at materials and changing material settings. The next thing that we want to do is kind of add some lights. And so before we start painting, we want to get our environment kind of close to what it will eventually look like. So we can actually bring in a lot of the lights that we'll be working with, and creating a more of a finished look before we start creating our materials, because we want to see our materials in context. We don't want to paint them in one environment and have them seen in a completely different environment, because they're not going to look the way that we intended them to look. So in the next lesson, we'll take a look at adding lights to our scene to kind of begin to set this whole scene up. So we'll go ahead and do that next.